In the grand tapestry of history, few figures stand as prominently as King Louis XIV of France, a monarch whose reign would shape the very essence of French identity and power. The sun rose over the opulent palace of Versailles, casting golden rays upon its meticulously manicured gardens and grand facades, a fitting emblem of the king who deemed himself the Sun King. It was here, in the latter half of the 17th century, that Louis XIV would solidify his legacy, an era marked by extravagant displays of wealth, artistic patronage, and an unwavering assertion of absolute authority. Louis XIV ascended to the throne at a tender age, just 4 years old, following the death of his father, King Louis XIII. The young king's early years were marred by the tumult of the Fronde, a series of civil wars that erupted as nobles and commoners alike challenged the crown's authority. These formative experiences instilled in Louis a profound understanding of the fragility of power and the necessity for a strong, centralized monarchy. As he grew, he witnessed the chaos that could ensue when royal authority was undermined, shaping his resolve to rule with an iron fist. By the time he reached his majority at the age of 23, Louis XIV was determined to assert his control over France. He famously declared, "L'État, c'est moi, I am the state," a proclamation that would resonate through the ages as a testament to his belief in absolute monarchy. Under his rule, the French state became synonymous with the king himself, and he sought to eliminate the power of the nobility, who had long enjoyed a degree of autonomy. Through a series of calculated moves, Louis centralized power in the hands of the monarchy, effectively diminishing the influence of the feudal lords. One of the pivotal moments of his reign came in 1661, when he appointed Jean-Baptiste Colbert as his finance minister. Colbert's policies focused on mercantilism, promoting French industry and trade, while imposing strict regulations on foreign imports. Under his stewardship, the French economy flourished and the kingdom's coffers began to swell. This economic stability allowed Louis to pursue his grand ambitions, including the construction of the lavish Palace of Versailles, which would become the epitome of royal extravagance and a symbol of his reign. The transformation of Versailles from a humble hunting lodge into a magnificent palace was a monumental undertaking that reflected Louis's desire for both personal grandeur and political control. The palace, with its ornate gardens, gilded halls, and breathtaking fountains, was designed not just as a residence, but as a stage upon which Louis could showcase his power and the glory of France. The famous Hall of Mirrors, with its dazzling chandeliers and reflective surfaces, became a metaphor for Louis's reign, a place where the light of the sun, his namesake, could be seen in all its brilliance. As the palace neared completion, Louis XIV summoned the nobility to Versailles, effectively drawing them into his orbit and away from their regional strongholds. By requiring their presence at court, he could monitor their activities, ensuring that they remained loyal and dependent on his favor. The court became a hub of art, culture, and politics, where Louis encouraged the flourishing of the arts, commissioning works from renowned artists, playwrights, and musicians. This patronage led to the creation of masterpieces that would immortalize his reign and elevate French culture to unprecedented heights. Yet despite the splendor of Versailles, Louis's reign was not without its challenges. The ambitious king engaged in a series of wars, driven by a desire to expand French territory and influence. The War of the Devolution, the Franco-Dutch War, and the War of the Spanish Succession were all conflicts that tested the limits of his power and resources. While some of these wars initially brought territorial gains, they ultimately strained the French economy and led to widespread suffering among the populace. The War of the Spanish Succession, in particular, would prove to be a turning point. Louis's attempt to place his grandson on the Spanish throne ignited a coalition of European powers determined to curb French expansion. The conflict dragged on for over a decade, culminating in the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, which forced France to cede significant territories and marked the beginning of a decline in Louis's influence on the continent. The war's toll on the French people was immense, exacerbating poverty and discontent, sowing the seeds of unrest that would later blossom into revolution. As Louis XIV aged, the weight of his decisions began to bear down upon him. His health declined, and the once vibrant king became a shadow of his former self. The lavish lifestyle that had defined his reign now appeared increasingly disconnected from the struggles faced by ordinary French citizens. The disparity between the opulence of Versailles and the hardships of the peasantry grew ever wider, creating a chasm that would prove insurmountable. In the twilight of his reign, Louis XIV faced the reality of his legacy. He had built a magnificent empire and elevated France to the forefront of European power, yet the very foundations of his absolute monarchy were beginning to show signs of fracture. The nobility, once tamed by his grandeur, began to harbor resentment, and the common people grew restless under the weight of heavy taxation and war. The king's vision of a unified France, centered around his person, was increasingly at odds with the realities of a diverse and complex society. When Louis XIV passed away in 1715, the world he left behind was one of stark contrasts. His reign had been characterized by unparalleled achievements in art and culture, yet it was also marked by the burdens of war and economic strife. The Sun King's legacy was a double-edged sword, a testament to the power of absolute monarchy, but also a cautionary tale of the perils of unchecked ambition. In the years following his death, the consequences of Louis XIV's reign became painfully evident. The financial burdens imposed by his wars and extravagant lifestyle weighed heavily on the French state, leading to widespread discontent that would eventually culminate in the French Revolution. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity that emerged in the wake of revolution stood in stark contrast to the absolutism that Louis had championed. Yet even as the revolutionary fervor swept through France, the influence of Louis XIV's reign could still be felt. His patronage of the arts had laid the groundwork for a cultural legacy that would endure long after his death. The works of Molière, Racine, and Lully continued to resonate, shaping the landscape of French literature and music for generations to come. The architectural marvels of Versailles became symbols of both grandeur and excess, serving as a reminder of a bygone era that had captivated the imagination of the world. Louis XIV's life and reign offer a complex portrait of a king who sought to mold his kingdom in his own image. He was a ruler who understood the importance of spectacle and symbolism, using the arts and architecture as tools to reinforce his authority. Yet his legacy is also a reminder of the limitations of absolute power and the inevitable consequences of disconnecting from the realities of one's subjects. As the Sun King, he shone brightly, illuminating the path of French history, but his light also cast long shadows that would challenge the very foundations of the monarchy he had built. In the annals of history, Louis XIV remains a figure of fascination and contradiction. His reign was a time of unparalleled artistic achievement and political ambition, yet it also served as a precursor to the tumultuous changes that would reshape France and the world. The lessons of his life resonate to this day, reminding us of the delicate balance between power and responsibility, and the enduring quest for a legacy that transcends the bounds of time.